Today's video, I'm just going to show some Reddit thread that was talking about teachers. I just found it very interesting and appropriate for the general state of things, how far society has fallen by this point. And growing up, it wasn't nearly as bad as it was today. And I feel like people can really tell that the clown freak show has really come out, and they're not holding anything back at this point, and they've jumped the shark, as people might say. And uh, part of me wants to always bring up that it was 9/11. Ever since 9/11, nothing's been the same. And education is just one example of that. But I think that an interesting part of education that doesn't really get talked about that much is that time is moving more quickly. And so that is a big aspect, because there really isn't the same amount of time anymore to cram all of the material in. So they're always removing things today. They don't do cursive anymore. There's no naps in kindergarten anymore. They don't teach driver's ed really anymore. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, they'll tell you that it's about funding, but there's high schools that have crazy stadiums, and there's money, there's funding. It's just it gets spent on technology and the flashy stuff so that some rich baffo gets even richer. And anyways, US teachers, are you okay? I've been extensively researching the current state of your educational system and the treatment you receive from administrators, parents, students, and the government. I'm curious to understand how you are coping with these challenges. While we in Europe also face difficulties, your situation appears particularly demanding. And this hits close to home to me. I I went to school, I got my 2 degrees, I went off and I got my job with my 2 degrees, and I was being treated very poorly by the university that I worked for. It was the crappiest department I've ever seen in my life. And the administration were always whispering behind closed doors and not telling anybody any information and treating people like dirt. And the higher ups got easy jobs and made tons of money. It was a government job, so you can look up what people make. And there's these people in the department that do nothing but like make people's lives miserable, and they're getting paid over $100,000 a year to do nothing, basically go to meetings every once in a while. And the little minions doing most of the work get paid scraps. Anyways, the that's when I was deep in alcoholism, was when I was working a really crappy job, getting paid such little money to do the actual work at the degree mill. And yeah, it sucks. So I relate. I was severely depressed and turned to alcohol when I was working, and I quit my job. And I mean, it really was to the point I was getting paid so little that basically my entire paycheck was gone with childcare and rent. I I imagine that after bills and rent and childcare, I probably had nothing left over from my paycheck. So I said, "F this." I mean, thank God I have support from my family, and that's another thing. It's like you can't, if you're my aged or even around that, the chances of you being able to like own a house is ridiculous. Like I don't know anybody that owns a house that didn't get helped out by their parents. And my dad helps me out. I have no shame in saying that. But I'm not rich by any means. I have enough to get by, and uh, I stay home and I homeschool. And so that's why this stuff just very much, I personally connect with all of this, because yeah, I was in education. My entire family was always in education. Anyways, here's the answer. How are the teachers coping? Antidepressants. Me too, my friend. I just switched mine. What are you on? I'm doing all right with Buspirone. I don't know. I don't know the names of some of these, but my my mom just yesterday, like I've said this before, how my Bafo family, they're like walking pharmacies, and my sister's going through something right now. Just her really elderly dog is on the end, and my mom keeps pushing her. Ask the vet for Xanax. Like what? Something about these people. They're so into popping a pill for their mentals. Anyways, Lexapro, anti-anxiety meds, live, laugh, Lexapro. I thought that was hilarious. Live, laugh, Lexapro. How am I coping? I spent 6 weeks in a hospital, if that gives you any indication as to how I'm coping. This person has to go back to school, otherwise they lose their insurance, take a pay cut. They claim that they do like their job. So teachers, they do get, and I don't know, I never really felt this, but I never wanted to teach the young children. I wanted to teach at university, so I didn't have that complex of, oh, I'm changing lives, I'm saving lives. But what I have to say about that is that's just like the golden lining of a pile of crap. If children just went to school to learn the basics, reading, writing, math, and then they went off and they explored the world and they tried to find out what interested them, because so here's what my mind goes to. A lot of people are like, either they think of the instances, oh, I changed that person's life, or they remember back, oh, I had this teacher that inspired me and changed my life. It didn't have to be a teacher. Okay, that's, yes, that teacher did end up inspiring, but if we didn't have this whole system where children are locked up and have no choice, then everybody would have inspirational stories, maybe from teachers, but probably not just from going out and meeting somebody and, oh, you know how to sew? Do you want to teach me how to sew? Do you get what I'm getting at? When people say, oh, but this teacher inspired me and changed my life, they would have been inspired and had their life changed by something else if they weren't locked up and not able to choose things and they were forcibly through this. And that's only the best case scenario. 99 times out of 100, the teachers are forgettable, or it's whatever, they were nice, but they're not changing your life or inspiring you in any ways, where if you were just left to your own devices to go find out what, or seek after what inspires you personally, we would have so many more stories, or you would have been a part of a guild or an apprentice of somebody and really had your skills taken to the next level, instead of like, oh yeah, that one teacher I had that one time was so inspiring. Bunch of BS in my opinion, but I know some people really are inspired, and it's like my mom tries to bring up, oh yeah, that teacher, you love them so much, and it's, I don't even remember them, and so I think that they're just coping, and they're looking back with rose tinted glasses, and they don't want to pretend that I wasn't forced to do stuff that I didn't want to do, that I had no choice in. And I mean, I just got into an argument with my mom not that long ago because she was trying to reality deny, talking about vaccines, and I just bring up the simple point of, well, I could never consent to vaccines, and I don't want, like, now I'm pissed. I don't hold it against her because I know that she probably thinks she was doing the best choice, so I don't hold it against her, but I would much prefer to have never been given a vaccine, and I was never able to consent. Nobody ever wants to talk about this fact. Children cannot consent to getting a vaccine. They can't. And I'm an example of a person who, I grew up and I said, I don't agree with that, and I would have preferred to never have that done to me. What are the people's answers to that? Children cannot consent. And then, so, but you know, that's where I just say, it's your children. You're going to do what you're going to do. I don't judge. I know that they think that they're doing the best thing, so I don't really judge them for that. But I just disagree, heavily disagree, and want to be able to choose for myself. School the same way. I feel blessed that I am able to homeschool, but it's another thing where children can't consent to that. Children can't consent to being forced to go to school. And I would have loved to be homeschooled and to be able to do my own thing and not be sent to indoctrination camp. And two of the smartest people I know in my life had unconventional upbringings, not in public school. And it's because I think that they were illuminated individuals there. I went to one of their weddings. There was the Masonic checkerboard dance floor, and these people, one of them like sailed across the world uh, as his growing up. You know, his childhood was any of those really obscure childhoods like that. I think that their parents are probably high up, Freemasonry, Baphomet, whatever. They know about the system of deception, and so that's why they they don't put their children in the rat race. They go off and tell them about how the earth's really flat and how history is a bunch of BS and we're living in the ruins of previous nations that were better than us and all that stuff. Anyways, what a ramble video. Are the teachers okay? No, they're not, and the system's not okay. And if anybody has good, I guess one thing I wanted to say is that for every inspiring teacher, you're gonna have 5 horrible ones that are you have bad memories and that traumatized you. And for every person that, oh, I love school, I made all my friends and all of this stuff, you're gonna have 5 people out there that were totally traumatized by school and bullied relentlessly. And so it's people only pick the positive things, and they won't even ask the question of, well, what about letting people choose whether to be a part of this or not? It's forced, mandated, you must be a part of this thing. You're an outcast if you're not a part of this thing. Total smear campaigns against anybody that doesn't want to do that. And notice how the upper crusts always have like a way out of it. They always have a way of not putting their children in the rat race, but still kind of being a part of the system, but like on an elevated level. That's where private schools come in, the rich people that send their children off to these fancy boarding schools and all that. I'm sure behind closed doors, certain of them are being taught things. Anyways, what a ramble of a video. Meds, I'm on meds. How many teachers are on anti-anxiety type meds? Oh man, the schools got hit hard with this most recent PSYOP. The schools were heavily involved with that. Forcing children to wear masks to school is one of the most dystopian things I can think of. Thank God that my oldest was going into kindergarten around that time, and so I think that made it really easy to convince my wife, we are not sending our children to school in a mask. We're doing homeschool. And yeah, I might do more homeschool videos or talking about this, just because, I mean, this is my life. This is what my life has been for the past few years. Is I've just been a homeschool dad, and I highly, if you're able to do it, it is such a blessing. And schools are absolute dumpster fires at this point. It's not even the same. And I meet so many people these days that homeschool. It's crazy. And just like going back to the Central Coast of California, my wife was bumping into people or meeting up with people. We were just meeting up with somebody, and this person works in education. It's hilarious how often this happens. One of my wife's old friends works in education. She stopped working and is now homeschooling her children. What do you know? I used to work in education. I stopped homeschooling children. Meeting other people that worked in education that stop and start homeschooling their children. Kind of interesting. I really liked this comment. There was a positive one. I always like to look for positive if it's like a negative, always look for both sides of the coin, because sometimes you get even more data out of that. Here's an example of that. So let's find a counter example. Somebody who loves their job in education. I'm doing fine, thanks for asking. Starting year 14 a few months, and by the grace of God, already I noticed something very different. Somebody who's having a positive teaching experience immediately is bringing up God and is thankful by the grace of God, saying that this is God is doing the work here. Probably they understand that their situation is not the norm, which is why they're bringing God up right at the beginning. How interesting. All these other people talking about, no, it's going horribly, I'm on antidepressants. The first thing where I saw somebody's having a good time, actually, this was the second time, so we'll get to the other one. They're talking about God. Interesting. It's a rural school, great kids, coworkers. The system is sickened, but in my experience overall, job satisfaction comes down to the school culture. So a godly school culture is more positive. didn't a state just make teaching the Bible mandatory? I think that's so cool. And I love that it's going to just rage a bunch of liberals, but I think that that's government in action in a positive way. I think that's cool. I've talked about that a lot, how how going through the education system, to me it was clear that no, it's not that we can't talk about religion. It's that we can't talk about Christianity. And that was very clear to me going through school, because we talk about all sorts of ancient Greek, lowercase g, God type stuff. We would talk about Islam things, and I'm sure that got ramped to 11 after me. So it wasn't about, oh, you can't talk about religion. No, it was all about no Christianity in school. It had to be an outside club after school activity to be Christian aligned. And anyways, dozens of us. I teach at a pretty positive rural school too. Rarely any fights. Truancy is our biggest problem. Truancy, that's just a problem for funding for them. They need butts in the seats at schools. It's all about getting the children there and locked away. And away from the family, and not living life. It's so cool to me going out with children when they're not supposed to be. So you turn a lot of heads when it's school season, school's in, it's the fall, whatever. You're out on a Tuesday in the middle of the day. You can go bowling whenever you want to, and you get the place to yourself, or maybe it's full of old people. Old people love seeing children. It's like they don't see enough children these days, and you can light up a whole room just walking in there with your children. And it's interesting that society is broken up like that. Children, what is the Arrested Development thing, seen but not heard. It's like we push the children in these little cages, and they don't get to be a part of society. Coping, I'm quitting. So here was another example of somebody who seemed okay. This was more of a neutral response. The one positive response I saw was somebody bringing up God instantly, living in a rural place. Here's another person with a positive or a neutral experience, maybe. Make just over 100K, only work 186 days a year, come in at 7:30, leave by 2:40, let the annoying roll off my back, and love life. Yeah, I mean, that's the key to enjoying any job, I think, being able to separate it from your life. Clock in, clock out. You're playing what you got to do to get your rat race money because you're a wage slave. Okay, that I get, but that's not the norm. Making 100K as a teacher, it happens though. They tell it. Oh, I don't know if I got later down. I think they said later that they worked in a more rich neighborhood. So it's like a rich getting richer situation. If you're upper middle class already, then maybe you could land a job in an area where teachers get paid good money. But this is the standard. Oh, just to show you how different it is across the US, I make $45,000, work 187. I worked for a university, and made less than this person. It was a joke. The education system is crumbling, which is hilarious because college costs so much more than it used to. And I'll tell you where that money is going. Building ugly new buildings, and breaking down old buildings, and some of these historical reset type buildings. Filling the new shiny buildings with technology that might get used once or twice a year, if it even functions. But I would I would walk into these rooms sometimes, and I'd be like, there's more money in screens in this classroom than I make in like 5 years. No joke. It's hard being a teacher. Even hard being a teacher who's a parent. When you see behind the scenes, it's really depressing to keep sending your kid. Yeah. Well, I'm going to end with this. Well, I have a Bible quote after this, but first I just read this today on YouTube. My dad was something of a philosopher, and when I was a kid, he used to read me philosophies that he agreed with, like this one by Walt Whitman from his book Leaves of Grass. How many people is this like such a foreign concept? Having somebody in your life who's like reading you philosophy books and like I don't want to say I don't want to say jealous because I don't feel jealousy, but my dad was just always working, would never sit me down and read me a philosophy book about life. Like, this just seems so foreign to me, but one of those things where I feel like times past had a richer culture and smarter people, and a lot of it has to do with spending time with one another and how people used to spend a lot more time with one another, and we're so distracted these days and have to go off to our 9 to 5 and think of how back in the day when people would go on vacation, they would pack everything and go off for months together. What's nowadays? Quickly pack the night before, you go fly somewhere, you go spend 3 days there, and then pack up and then go back. Like, it's just so different. And yeah, I've never had somebody like put me under my wing or and I'm just sharing this because I feel like a lot of people are going to relate that. And yeah, it's not like a jealous thing. Like it would be nice. And it does make me a little upset that nobody, but I don't feel like you can expect that in life. I guess I'm just more of a realist. Like you can't expect somebody to take the time out of their life to mentor you just because, I mean, they have their own life and their own stuff going on. But anyways, this is just when stuff like this happens, it's like so otherworldly to me that it's almost comical that there's like dads out there that sit their kid down and read philosophy to them. It just seems so foreign to me. Love the earth and sun and the animals. Despise riches. Give alms to everyone that asks. Stand up for the stupid and crazy. That's a cool one. Devote your income and labor to others. Hate tyrants. Argue not concerning God. Have patience. See, some of these I'd like some more elaboration because I think that there's a lot of truth in here, and maybe it'll relate to some people. Like the arguing not about God, I feel that in like Jesus is the most important thing. If you agree on that, that's cool, and you should at least be able to go and agree on that. And then other that, and then that, you should be able to say like, you know, that's cool. Have your opinion. And yeah, I get when it comes to God, like iron sharpens iron, and you probably don't want to be wishy-washy and mess around with, because sometimes people have, my point is, sometimes people have religious opinions that make me feel a little like I'm not comfortable with that. Like I don't personally think God is okay with that, but I just set it aside and you know God is the judge. It's not me, and you can't force your beliefs on other people. So I get where he's I think I agree with that sentiment. Argue not concerning God in that respect. If if you're two good people who know each other, you know your limits, and you're iron sharpening iron. I think that's a separate scenario. It's not an argument; it's a discussion at that point. Anyways, have patience and indulgence toward the people. Take off your hat to nothing known or unknown, to any man or number of men. I don't know what that means, but I don't like people who wear hats indoors. I mean, not the people. When people are wearing hats indoors, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know what it is. Uh, it's just a weird thing. I don't judge them, but it's just one of those things that make people go freely with powerful, uneducated persons, and with the young and with the mothers of families. Powerful, uneducated persons. It is interesting because that is kind of a meme, or at least something that we see happen a lot, where you'll find a very, very successful person and they'll tell you, oh yeah, I dropped out of high school and then I did this and that. And I feel like everybody's run into a handful of those types of people. And it just shows you that it's about, life's about what you do, and uh, what you do, who you know. It's not about whether you get a C minus or an A plus in a class you took in junior high or even in high school. That stuff ultimately doesn't matter. And it's because the system is a trap. Moving on, read these leaves in the open air every season of every year of your life. Okay, I think this guy's a little full of himself. Re-examine all this. This was the reason that I wanted to read this, because I bring this up a lot. And I'll keep bringing it up. Show me a great, I don't like using the word great, show me a big philosopher out there who hasn't said something like this. Re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your own soul, and your very flesh shall be a great poem. Okay, I'm not saying I agree with everything that this guy's saying, but it's just yet again another example where don't believe everything that you're told. I liked this one talking specifically about re-examine everything you've been told at school. What I find very suspicious about these types of people is they won't elaborate. Elaborate! If you're going to tell somebody something like that, what are the things that you learned in school that you re-examined and that you don't agree with? Why don't you tell us? And I feel like a lot of times these people are gatekeepers, and you see this like dad talking about philosophy to their son, very close, personal, behind closed doors. This is how the hidden knowledge is spread from dad to son, behind closed doors, reading philosophy. Oh, re-examining something in school. Yes, son, the ball earth is a bunch of bullshit. It's cartoons for a reason. And I think that's oftentimes how this information gets passed down. Matthew chapter 23, verse 8 through 12. Be ye not called rabbi, and rabbi means teacher. And I think that is really interesting, examining Jewish people. They really do treat rabbis like these all-knowing teacher figures that will bestow all sorts of knowledge on them. It's very interesting. I remember somebody I know that was Jewish, his dog was dying, which is kind of I was just talking about that earlier. And he was asking his rabbi if dogs have souls and like what's going to happen to his dog after death. They really see rabbis as these people that they can go to with questions and they'll always have an answer. They're a wise guy, a rabbi. And it kind of puts into perspective all the Talmudic stuff. It's all these wise guys trying to out brainiac one another. And but connected with God, trying to be the best interpreters of spiritual things and coming from a place of authority, alleged authority. And that's why I love these verses here. Everybody's on the same playing field, in my opinion. And I mean, Jesus says it even better, that the servants are better than the people that are being served to. And reminds me of the parable of was it in Ecclesiastes, of the poor old man who saves the entire city from siege with his idea, and quickly the city forgets about the old man. They were being sieged by a great empire, and just one poor old man saved everybody with his idea, and then people quickly forget about him. And how our treasures aren't here on earth. We're not here to have a cushy, easy life and get everything we want here. And God's children suffer greatly on earth, and these are all just parts of life. But I mean, the teacher thing, authority, in the same way that we're all more or less on the same playing field. We're all flawed individuals. We're all sinners. We can't point to somebody and say they're better than this other person. It should be that way about ideas and learning. And people shouldn't be so quick to consider themselves experts or notice master. You'll notice the word master get thrown around all the time. You go watch a video of somebody playing an instrument. Oh, they're a master, this musician. And, oh, master gardener. What is up with all these master gardener things? And it goes into Freemasonry too. Master Mason. And that's why they like the title. And they like it because it's blasphemous. Because Jesus specifically told us not to do that. So you'll get these groups that go ahead and purposefully do the opposite. I'm just going to read this, and that'll be it for this video. But be ye not called rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. I take these very seriously and literally. And this is where people are probably going to have their own opinions, but I think that if nobody used the word Father except for to mean God, I think that the world would change. I think that there's power in that, in reserving the word Father for all of our fathers, the Heavenly Father, the Father of everything. And so I think that, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you're going to go to hell if you call your dad father, but I'm willing to put myself out there and say, I personally think that we should reserve the word father. I think that Jesus was being literal here, personally. And anyways, neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. These are just really, really amazing verses that can keep you humble. And yeah, even I complain sometimes. I complain sometimes to my children. I'll say, like, because they'll just be demanding stuff out of me, and out of my mouth I'll say, what, I'm not your servant. And then this pops into my mind. And I'm like, oh, well, I should be, right? Maybe I shouldn't be complaining about serving my children. And yep, that is it for this video. Leave a comment. Hope you enjoyed. God bless everyone.